Hello everybody for the new XLOG video. For today's video I've found a very nice comment under the last XLOG video with questions from a user from Hamburg, and maybe I can touch on all of those 4 points together, maybe at least on the first two, because they pretty much go together very well. So what I would like to explain today is how different games simulate a universe. Today there's a lot of games that call themselves open world games, and there's still a big difference between what an open world game really is and how it simulates the universe and how deeply it simulates the universe. Many of you, of course, expect such a game to simulate the entire universe, because that's the idea that it's selling. It's an open world. You have this entire universe in front of you, and when you travel through the game, you see all those objects, depending on what game it is, different things, and it's always telling you that story that all of these things are real. All of those things are simulated behind your back for the entire world. But of course that's not really possible, and it depends on the type of game and also the type of audience, how much trickery is going on behind the scenes and what they are really doing. One type of game in particular that goes further than most PC games are probably online games, because for online games clearly you have to simulate more than just what one player sees, because there's many players in one universe, and there's always multiple computers involved as well. It's not just you and your computer or your console when you are playing, but also the servers that are transferring data to your computer. So there's a simulation level happening on a server where the world can continue to exist even when you turn off your computer or your console. But even in online games, not everything that you see is actually simulated. Even in online games, there's a lot of trickery going on and a lot of cheating, if you will. This is especially true nowadays with mobile games. Lots of mobile games actually only create the impression that things are actually online when they are oftentimes not. And even when you see other players, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are right now playing the exact same thing that you are seeing. Sometimes they are not playing at all. That's a little bit what we are doing with our online mode, where you do know these other people that you see in our online mode in X4 are also playing the game, but they are not necessarily playing it right now, and they have sent their ships into your universe, and they are now a visitor. But on mobile games this goes a lot further. They oftentimes actually make you play completely on your client, on your phone, separated from servers, and only transfer data occasionally. But anyway, that's a different story. The point is, what's really simulated and what's actually existing in this universe can vary a lot. But even in single-player games that are only there for you, which are only living on your computer, on your console, the level in how a universe is simulated can vary a great deal. There's at least 2 games that I would like to take as a comparison to what we are doing, to explain why what we are doing is different and why it brings with it a couple of problems, and is also a reason for some of our bugs sometimes. So one example is Minecraft, one game that I really love, and it's special in many ways, because it's very unique in how it creates its universe. It was unique, at least at the time when it came out, and special because it has this really big world, and yet if you look at a save game, it's really tiny. So how can they fit this huge universe into such a tiny save game at the beginning? And that's of course because everything is generated procedurally. That's nothing new now anymore. You've heard that probably from other games, but Minecraft does it in a very, very clever way. They basically create an entire world out of just a random number generator, and you can have this thing called a seed value, one number that is fed into this random number generator to always create the same world again out every time you create it again. So theoretically you can store an entire planet worth of life, minds, everything, creatures in a single number, and it will always be the same when you create it again. So the trick here is that the world at the beginning is defined very simple, and so at the beginning your save game can also be very, very small. And when you then continue to play and you change the world, the save game starts to grow, because everything that you touch, everything that you change will now become a real object, will now have to be stored persistently. Otherwise it wouldn't be the same anymore after a while. And that's what Minecraft does. So after playing for many, many weeks and months in one of those save games, the world data becomes bigger and bigger, and your save games can grow. If you've had a look at a save game in an X game, you know that we work a bit differently, but we have a similar problem to Minecraft. Our universe is also stored entirely in a save game because it lives entirely only on your PC, and and that requires a lot of data, and save games can become extremely big, hundreds of megabytes potentially, but then they are compressed. In Minecraft there's a lot of stuff that is persistently stored, but not necessarily a lot of stuff that is actually simulated, because that's the other thing. Usually you see the creatures around you, the zombies and the creatures that you can see, and clearly these are simulated, but the world is so big and there's no need in Minecraft to simulate other creatures at the other side of the planet. In fact, it wouldn't be good if they did, because then these creatures would probably potentially do changes to the world, which would have to be stored in the save game again. So as long as the creatures didn't even exist, then the creeper cannot blow up and blow a hole into the map. So in Minecraft it's pretty simple. Only those creatures around you actually exist, and you can play with multiple people on the same map, and then you have multiple patches of the map that are becoming live, so to speak, for a short period of time, and then they go dormant again, and the objects cease to exist there, but the world is saved as a static thing. For us this is different, because there's one reason really why we wanted to simulate everything. So even the ships especially, but also stations, and especially producing factories in our universe that are at the opposite side of the universe, they actually are simulated, and that means they produce wares, they fly routes and bring wares from A to B, and interact with other NPC agents. And the question is why? Why would we do that? And in the beginning of the game, when you start a new game, it's really crazy. We are simulating thousands of ships and thousands of stations in the entire universe, and you only see this tiny little bit of it, and it's really crazy. But I always thought this is really what makes an X game, that we have this true universe simulation, and that it really develops in unpredictable ways oftentimes when it plays out. And the real benefit of this system for us happens later, when you play for a long time and your influence in the universe grows bigger, and therefore you can see all the NPCs actually reacting to it. That would be something that would be really, really hard to do if we wouldn't actually simulate all of those objects. In our universe it is in a way a naive, true simulation, because that's what you expect. Naive as in, this is what we are actually telling is what's really happening. But even in our game, that's not the full story, because no game can really simulate everything. Every game has to cheat a little bit, and so the question is always just how deep do you go with your simulation? What objects really need to exist? What objects do you really need to store in a save game? You always have to make compromises and always have to find something where you can save bytes and where you can save performance. So another example to compare with is another nice open world game, that's GTA. I love both of those games, and really don't take me wrong here. I'm not criticizing these games because I'm saying we have this full simulation and these games don't have that. Far from it, because you always have to ask yourself, why would this game do that? And of course, it doesn't really make sense for GTA, for example, to simulate NPCs at the other side of the map. When you drive your car around, obviously the cars in your near vicinity, or everything that you see, those objects are simulated. But why would the world of GTA become any better if the game continues to simulate that rocker band at the north of the map that at some point you go to and murder a lot of people and then never see again? Why would they have to continue living when you don't see them? Obviously they don't exist, or sometimes maybe they store persistent information so you can meet an NPC again later for storytelling purpose, but they are not contributing anything else to the world when they are not seen, so they are not simulated, of course. It would be stupid to do it and just cost memory and performance. And the same is true with the zombies in Minecraft. The game wouldn't be any better if you simulated all of those creatures in the entire world. But for our game, there's a different aspect, and that's the economy simulation. The fact that we are talking about a living economy which influences everything that you see on that economic level, and where you later in the game start to participate by producing wares yourself, or even when you just destroy a ship, you participate in the economy by draining it and costing factions wares. And this was always the vision with the X games, that this truly simulated economy makes the universe more alive and more real. But that only makes sense in an economy simulating game, where in GTA, of course, there's little trading. You buy weapons, of course, but they are not manufactured from the ore in the mountains. And obviously that wouldn't make any sense there. So it's just not an economy-heavy game. But X really, that's the root that everything else stands on. Yes, we always want to make the game also for players who only enjoy it for action, who only enjoy it for missions. But still, even then, I believe that the game gets better through this connection with the economy, because oftentimes in its best moments, the behavior of NPCs, like be it pirates, be it the military of a large faction like the Argon Federation, their behavior can be traced back to economic decisions, and that's really what the game what makes an X game. But it's also the answer, or the biggest part of the answer to that first question this user was asking, because it's also what troubles us a lot. It's also what creates a lot of problems. So I often call this a bottom-up simulation, as in we are simulating individual little agents, ships, stations, the manager on a station, and they interact with each other and build the universe. So we are simulating the little pieces, and the big pieces become a result of that, rather than the other way around. And we are not simulating it to create an impression for the player, but we are simulating it really to simulate a universe. And that's the opposite. The opposite approach would be a top-down design, where you design it with the impression the player has in mind first. You can also do that with an economy game, and I think there's lots like that out there. But I think for economy games, I really believe in the answer that bottom-up simulation, the way I'm describing it, is better than a top-down approach where you would on the short run have a nicer gameplay experience, because you always can make sure the player sees, for example, the profit that is fun for him. Yeah, that's the goal that you want to achieve. Player wants to trade and wants to have fun with trading, so you design the gameplay experience according to those goals. But that would be pretty shallow, and if you play it for a while, you would see that things are always basically designed just to make you happy, and it wouldn't have that depth of a true universe. So for the economic simulation part, bottom up is the way to go. That's what I really believe in. But it also creates a lot of problems and a lot of unforeseen things, and that's because the simulation is really unpredictable oftentimes. It's a chaotic system. You can also see this even if you take to a safe game and give it to a friend of yours, so that you both load the same save game from that moment on, continue playing with that same save game for a while. You will see that the universe is only the same for a very short moment, because after that it diverts away quickly because of all of those little decisions which add up. Little things add up to big things. So the changes might be very tiny in the beginning, but when you let that simulation run for many days or many weeks, then everything, then all the little changes in the universe can sum up to huge changes. And the little changes can be introduced through what you do as a player. Of course, that's the win, that's what we want, that your influence changes the universe, and the bigger changes, the bigger the influence, of course. But also small things like just the frame rate at which the game is running on your computer may make a difference, as in tiny, seemingly unimportant differences in NPC decision-making processes, or how a ship flies, or many other things, and that also can sum up. So it's truly chaotic in that sense. And that is what makes it hard for us to debug. You can already see where I'm getting at. What will happen to our economy after playing the game for weeks is unpredictable. It's completely unpredictable. Every time you play the game, it is different. So the way for us to test the game is oftentimes just letting it run many times. So we write code to simulate to program the behavior of different NPC agents, lots of them, and then we try it out in our world, in our universe simulation, and see how it goes. And this is in this chaotic world, which goes different every time. We can still, of course, trace certain patterns, and sometimes we see something goes wrong, and a trader doesn't buy the stuff he should be buying, and therefore we can look at his AI code and fix the reasoning. But the problematic cases are those where you don't think there is a cause and effect, because it's a very long chain sometimes. Something tiny breaks somewhere, seemingly unimportant, and only after you trace it over many steps, suddenly you find that this little thing caused a much bigger thing to fail at a much later point. So testing for us is really oftentimes letting the entire universe simulation run in an accelerated mode. Fortunately, that's something we can do. We don't have to run the game in the true speed like it would be running on your computer, but basically with Zeta, faster. And we can even run it faster than with normal Zeta sometimes. But even then, it is very common for us that we have computers here at the office that are running for many hours, for many days actually, through the night oftentimes, and then at the next day we run economy logs. That's basically a lot of data stored out of the game, and then we interpret huge tables and look at what's going on. We see from hundreds of stations across the universe, interpret what are they buying, what are they selling, which stations have been destroyed, which faction is growing, which faction is shrinking. This was always complicated with X games because this, at the nature, at the root, this was always how our games work, even with the first one, X Beyond the Frontier. But of course, this level of simulation grew from game to game. Now we are with every new game we are giving the factions and the individual NPCs more. We simulate more. We cheat less. That's how you can put it. As I said before, every game has to cheat. There's nothing is. It's never that you are simulating everything. We always have to make compromises. For a nice example in our case would be the Mars traffic, for example. Mars traffic are those little tiny vessels that you see flying around stations sometimes, and I see them mostly as a decorative thing, but they also represent something. So they are not completely pointless. They are not just decoration. You can see, for example, at least potentially, in some cases we did that, which types of wares are currently being transported around the station, or how many people are aboard the station. So in that sense, they do represent information, true actual information of that universe, persistent information, but they are not as entities simulated when you don't look anymore. They are really just a nice large system that is created the moment you go there, and all those individual vessels are not existing otherwise. But all the other ships, the bigger ships, are, and even those that are not directly involved in the economy. So traders obviously have to be simulated, the factories that manufacture the wares, and that's not just one object when I'm saying a factory. A factory is the sum of many objects. It's of course modules, production modules, storage modules that get the wares, the living sections where the people are in. Most of this is just data, like the storage facility is just data. It doesn't have code running. It's just it just has a certain it has the data of what's inside, but many things are actual entities executing code. For example, the manager on such a station, or the production component. Those objects actually execute code producing wares, and the manager influences that again. And then the captain of a ship makes decisions about how the ship is flying, and then the ship is the data container flying around. So it's a very big simulation out of thousands and thousands of objects interacting with each other, and it's truly beautiful sometimes to just watch in awe how this entire universe is developing. That's really the nice thing from our perspective, that also for us surprising things happen. It's unpredictable, it's interesting, it's new every time, but also hard to debug and problematic, and so we have to be careful with every patch, with every change we make. We have to be careful not to break something, and it's a constant struggle. So this, I hope, answers at least the first two of the questions in this YouTuber's question, and hope to get to answer more stuff in the future. And so I invite everybody who is watching this to also post some questions in the comments below. Like and subscribe us. Subscribe to this channel if you like these kind of videos. And then I hope to see you again soon.